Assalamualaikum to our lecturer, Dr. Fana. We are from Group 2. I will be presenting about our group assignment, which is Great Smoke of London. Our group consists of 4 members, which is me, NASREEN, Muhammad FIZRI, Muhammad Danial, and DIYANAH. The purpose of this case study is to relate how the environmental issue, which is air pollution, affects the environment ecosystem. In this case, the air pollution affected the city of London in 1952 due to some environmental issue. In the 19th century, with the advent of the Industrial Revolution and the rapid rise of the metropolis, air pollution reached a crisis. London suffered with poor quality of air as many industries were concentrated in one place compared to another city in the United States. During the 1950s, coal was a major power source where within the boundaries of London, there were countless coal-burning power plants situated for generating electricity. Citizens of London also burned coals to heat up their homes during the winter season of 1952. On 5th December of 1952, the city of London was blanketed by a lethal and deadly smoke that remained for 5 days. Yet, the people of London still lived their life as usual as fog was a common phenomenon in London. Throughout the week, fog-related deaths have been reported where more than 4,000 people, including animals, have died that suffered from that toxic air. During the period of the fog, huge amounts of impurities were released into the air surrounding throughout the city of London. One of the pressure issues is the visibility, where all of the city's transport networks were seized up. All aviation barely functions, as most airplanes cannot operate in foggy conditions due to poor visibility. Above-ground transportation also faces the same problem, where buses drivers could not see far enough their routes, which can risk the passenger. As the vehicle transportation cannot be used, the crime rates of London also increases, where thieves were able to steal some of the automobile equipment. The number of robberies and mugging have also significantly increased. This issue has raised a surge of concern in citizens of London as police were unable to play their duties in the foggy condition.
Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is FIZRI, and today I'll be explaining how exactly the Great Smoke of London happens. Okay, in a nutshell, we have 4 reasons behind the tragedy. First of all will be the reliance on non-eco-friendly fuels such as diesel and coal, unpredictable weather for the second point. For the third point will be London's geography, and lastly, lack of prior legislation. Okay, I'll be explaining about the first point, reliance on non-eco-friendly fuel. In 1900s, the Industrial Revolution begins in England. Hence, there are increase in coal-fired power plants for electricity and heat, diesel-powered buses for public transportation. Okay, as we know, England has 4 seasons, and one of it is winter. So during the winter, burning of large quantities of coal happens in their homes to fight against the cold weather, and also they're using coal because it is cheap in price and most people can afford to buy it. And eventually led to the increasing of smoke, which eventually become one of the factors which led to the tragedy. Okay, next point, unpredictable weather. An anticyclone, a high pressure weather system, was hanging over the region, resulted in temperature inversion. Temperature inversion can be simply defined as when the cold air is trapped under the ground under a layer of warm air. On the ground under a layer of warm air. Okay, as smoke from the innumerable chimneys comes up, it is trapped as it pushed downwards while warming as it goes near the ground level. Hence, from the smoke, there are pollutants such as ground level ozone. This is some kind of new pollutants which is formed due to the compounds ending up reacting with each other near the ground level. Hence, what happens lastly, the coal smoke which smelled like rotten eggs was trapped near the ground level during the 5 days of this tragedy. Okay, next slide. I'm going to cover for the third and fourth reason on how the tragedy occurs. Okay, for the third reason, London's geography. England is known for its cold, damp and moist environment. Hence, the dampness and moist weather contribute to the thickening of the fog, especially during the night. As we know, during the day the fog is not as thick as during the night. As during the night, the moisture content of air increasing compared to during the day. Hence, it endangers the people's safety during the night as they can't see mostly what's in front of them and they need to just stay inside their house. Lastly, lack of prior legislation. It is not the first case of air pollution in the city. Going back 300 years ago, in the 1600s, complaints have been made by the citizens to the king, which is King James I. However, nothing changes, and air pollution reached a crisis in the 1900th century. However, despite the deterioration of the public's health, the public has no right to speak given the plethora of jobs provided by the coal industry. I think that's all from me. Thank you. Moving on to the next presenter.
My name is Muhammad Haiqal. A1980-0124 will be presenting the discussions. First up is the summary of the major problems. London is damp, cold and moist. Water vapor are able to attach to particulates that was made by coal burning. The water vapor will attach to particulates generated by coal burning industries, forming black and heavy clouds that decreases visibility. Most households and factories in London uses coal as heat and energy. The increase in household fires and factory furnaces resulted in a significant increase in polluting emissions. Smoke fills the skies of London. Little was done due to the jobs created. Folks in London may linger awake, and deaths from the fog were recorded on gravestones in the early 1800s. After the events of 1952, the British government enacted a Clean Air Act. The British government was slow to respond at first, but 4 years later in 1956, the Clean Air Act was created as a direct response to the deadly flag. Next up is the alternative solution with its advantages and disadvantages. One of the solutions that can be considered is the replacement of coal to natural gas or higher quality coal. When we compare natural gas emissions with coal, its emission is 50% less than coals, and high quality coals produce less smoke, higher energy output and burns longer. This does not change the fact that these fuels also do harm the environment, but devastates it lesser when compared to coals. Aside from that, we could use or install flue gas desulfurization equipment, also known as scrubbers, and installing solar panels. The flue gas equipment is important to clean the sulfur from the smokestack. The disadvantage of using it is it's more costly due to not everyone is able to afford a scrubber and solar panels to their homes. Also, the progress of technology made it impossible to use these equipment effectively in 1952.
Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Diyanah binti Abdurrahman, and I'll explain the conclusion of this case study. To conclude our case study, we have learned that the case was a major contributor that leads to air pollution. We know that the smoke was caused by reliance of non-eco-friendly fuel, unpredicted weather, London's geographies, and the lack of prior legislation. Upon that, it is to us why we now have the British Clean Act, which to control the production of dark smoke into a good use. Apart from that, it is very important to apply environmental ethics into our daily life because it provides moral grounds for social policies that aims at remedying environmental degradation. On the other hand, it will make us aware of indiscriminate and destructive human activities, also to inculcate moral values towards nature and learn to respect various life forms through environmental ethics. That's all from us. Thank you.